Okay, let's talk about identity. Imagine this. You're walking through life feeling like you have to prove yourself to everyone around you. Maybe it's through your achievements, your relationships, or how you look. But deep down, there's this nagging voice whispering, you're not enough. You have to work harder to be accepted. Who you are isn't worth anything. That voice thrives in confusion and insecurity and in the absence of truth. But now imagine this. Jesus is standing right next to you. You can see him. His presence is undeniable. And he looks at you, not with disappointment or criticism, but with love. He says, you are mine. I created you on purpose, for a purpose. You are enough because I made you. Suddenly, that voice of insecurity, it starts to shrink. Now imagine Jesus moves a little farther away. Maybe he's still visible, but he feels distant. That lie creeps back in, but it's louder this time. You might start to believe those lies again. And now imagine Jesus isn't visible at all. He's far away, seemingly out of reach. That's when the lies feel overwhelming, when the awareness of God's presence diminishes and we forget who we are in him. Here's the truth. God never intended for you to find your identity in your achievements, your relationship, or your status. He designed you to find your worth in him. In Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Your identity is rooted in the simple, profound truth. You were made in the image of God. That's where your value comes from. Not from what you did or what you do, but from who you are. What happens when we forget our identity? When we lose sight of God's presence, we lose sight of who we are. Think about Adam and Eve in the garden. Before the fall, they walked with God in perfect harmony. They knew their identity because they were fully aware of his presence. But after they sinned, what did they do? They hid. They covered themselves with fig leaves, ashamed and confused about who they were. In Genesis 3:9, God asked them, where are you? Not because he didn't know, but because he wanted them to realize where they had placed themselves, hiding, disconnected from him. When we forget who we are in Christ, we start to look for identity in all the wrong places. The world will tell you who you are. It will say, you're only as good as your last success. You have to be perfect to be loved. You are what people think of you. But God says, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139:14. You are my child. John 1:12. You are loved with an everlasting love. Jeremiah 31:3. When you're aware of God's presence, his truth drowns out all the lies. So how do you reconnect with your identity in Christ? Number one, invite God into your struggle. If you've been believing lies about yourself, bring them to God. Say, God, I've been finding my worth in the wrong things. Remind me of who I am. Number two, meditate on his word. The Bible isn't a book, it's God's love letter to you, full of reminders about who you are. Spend time in verses like, therefore, if anyone in Christ, then the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Number three, spend time in his presence. When you spend time with God, whether through prayer, worship, or quiet reflection, you become more aware of his love for you. And when you're aware of his love, you remember your worth. And think about Peter. Before he followed Jesus, he was just a fisherman, but Jesus saw more in him. He said, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Matthew 16:18. Peter didn't always live up to that identity. He doubted it. He denied Jesus. But every time Jesus restored him, reminding him of who he was called to be. God does the same for you. Even when you doubt, even when you fail, he looks at you and says, you are mine. Let me ask you, where are you right now? Are you living out of the identity the world has given you? Or are you living out of the truth of who God says you are? God is asking you the same question he asked Adam and Eve. Where are you?